Try to get out in the divorce early in the that Bankrupt Will Nathan took trips during the election interference. Motion maintains marriage fell before she met him. She accused of kissed her, and the judge will see.
President a divorce case after this public prior to marital life.
Election interference in one case claiming with hearings
because then they'll already be in half the rate.
The impact of rights to fund the prosecution zone.
Also, will make have birds. Will it ultimately decide the case? No.
Records show that he's making more money than the other specialists involved in this investigation. This despite that Fonnie Willie's not stay on pay. For good Eric.
All right, Mark, thanks so much.
For the second major contest in the 2024 presidential race. They now have just two Republican candidates to choose from after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis dropped his presidential bid. Fox's Kaylee Schuyler is live from Bedford, New Hampshire with the final push before the primary. Kaylee?
Hey, Alex. Well, many voters seem surprised that DeSantis is dropping out of the race so early. DeSantis had events scheduled in New Hampshire last night, but canceled them after his announcement. He also endorsed former President Donald Trump, who promised to stop using the nickname Ron DeSanctimonious.
I'd like to take time to congratulate Ron DeSantis and, of course, a really terrific person who have gotten to know his wife Casey for having run a great campaign for president. He did.
Now Trump's focusing his fire on former UN ambassador and current political rival Nikki Haley. Trump has called her unelectable, while she's questioning his mental fitness. The latest poll shows Trump with 57% and Haley with 38%, each with a 2% increase from Saturday to Sunday. Trump is back in New York for a defamation trial today, but he plans to return to New Hampshire tonight. Haley is holding several town halls today and campaigned with Judge Judy.
They don't want this thing to spiral out all across the Middle East.
Very, very hard to make sure this conflict doesn't escalate. And I would tell you, and again, the attacks of our troops in Iraq and Pakistan, and of course the continued Houthi attacks on shipping in the Red Sea, notwithstanding, no other actor has really jumped in with both feet to help Hamas in this war.
Also this afternoon, the U.S. military says it has ended its search for those two missing Navy SEALs off of Somalia's coast. The SEALs went missing more than 10 days ago after conducting a daring raid against a ship bound for Yemen loaded with Iranian weapons. Texas officials have taken control of a spot along the southern border that they say is a key passage for migrants. The state kicked border control agents out of Shelby Park and are now allowing Texas state troopers the authority to arrest migrants. They're now being charged with criminal trespassing. Arrested migrants will wait in jail until sentenced.
Democrats don't
Texas
like
will
this.
Turn the migrants over to ICE, which will then decide whether to deport them or not. Members of the Texas state legislature got a tour of border operations and have a message for the Biden administration.
My personal message would be that your policy positions and your decisions matter. And we have a true chaotic anarchy type situation with people coming over by the thousands.
Texas DPS told us the Mexican
Chaos in the Biden administration.
With the U.S. Any migrants traveling in trains that are going to the United States will be picked up and bused further south into Mexico. Well, we know pets are covered in fur, but that
It shows that over first and a strong lead in polls, and Trump is telling his supporters to not believe in polls and just go out and vote. He says it needs a very strong margin to be able to send a clear signal across the country about November and to overcome any potential election fraud. Reporting in New Hampshire, Iris Tao, NTD News.
New Hampshire captures the nation's attention every 4 years during election season. Let's take a look at the first in the nation primary and why it's so important.
Though the Iowa caucuses are the first votes to be cast, New Hampshire is the nation's first true primary. That's because the state maintains a law that protects its first-in-the-nation status. In 1948, legislatures in the Granite State decided to hold the presidential primary on the same day as town meetings to save money. New Hampshire's town meeting day was well before any other states held their presidential primaries. This meant that since that year, New Hampshire would always be the nation's first primary. The state's top election officials can also move the date if another state tries to hold theirs earlier. This year, Democrats wanted to hold their first primary in South Carolina, but Republicans refused to budge from New Hampshire.
I'm thrilled to be here in the home of the first in the nation primary. Do you know why you're first in the nation? Because of me. I kept you there, unlike Biden. I kept you there.
So why is this important? Whoever wins the New Hampshire primary captures early momentum in the race for their party's nomination, and losers have to reevaluate their campaigns. With only 2 candidates left on the GOP side and former President Trump in the lead, a disappointing performance in New Hampshire could mean the end of Nikki Haley's campaign. That would make Trump the Republican nominee for a 3rd straight election. But New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu believes Haley could still pull off an upset, even if she doesn't win the Granite State. On the other hand, if she does well, she could carry that momentum into future primaries.
But everything Nikki's trying to do is build on the momentum from Iowa, right? 2% to 20%, build on even more momentum here. The fact that she's knocked all the other candidates out. Nobody thought that was possible, but she's really knocked everybody out.
Voters in New Hampshire are different from those in Iowa. They're more moderate and less evangelical. Haley is positioning herself as that moderate option for New Hampshire Republicans.
This is a wake-up call for the Republican Party. Do you want to go with a small amount that you keep pushing people away, or do you want to go with a conservative that knows how to talk to moderates and independents and not make them feel bad, but make them feel included?
On the Democratic side, President Joe Biden is in the lead, but the Democratic National Committee's new rules made South Carolina their first official primary instead of New Hampshire. This means Biden's name will not appear on the New Hampshire ballots. Voters will have to write in his name, and a victory here will not
To support Trump.
Carla Marshall says people are working hard to keep Trump down, but he just bounces right up.
I really love the guy, and I've never felt that way about a politician before. He says stuff that's inappropriate a lot, but a lot of it is stuff that I thought.
Professor David Jones says Trump's presidency was outstanding.
His attitude, his language is sometimes awful, but I don't have to have a president that I like. I have to have a president who runs this country effectively. He does.
He did a great job the first 4 years. I want him back in office.
The guy went to North Korea. Nobody's done that before.
Volunteers at Trump's New Hampshire campaign headquarters on Sunday tried to convince undecided voters to choose the former president. Campaign volunteer Tracy Sosa says the team is going to knock on doors and make phone calls.
Anything to get President Trump back in. He's for the people. And I hope everybody sees that.
Michael Torchetti says he never voted before Trump got into politics in 2016.
He's the greatest president of all time, and I think if everything's fair and there's no cheating, then he'll win.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis ended his campaign on Sunday. Trump reacted to the news.
But as you know, he left the campaign trail today at 3 p.m., and in so doing, he was very gracious, and he endorsed me.
Iowans gave Trump an overwhelming victory in the first vote of the GOP primary contest. The former president currently leads former Ambassador Nikki Haley in New Hampshire by 17 points in the latest Real Clear polling average. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Criticize him based on his age more and more and questioning his mental competency. She says America doesn't want a race between two 80-year-olds. President Trump is 77. President Biden is 81. She's presenting herself as more youthful, more vigorous, a better alternative. The other word she likes to use is chaos. She says about President Trump, chaos follows him, and her word is, President Trump was the man for yesterday. I'm the person for today and going forward. So that's her attack on him. President Trump aims to depict her as a lightweight. She's just not up to the job. She can't handle dealing with foreign leaders. She just doesn't have what it takes. He's somewhat dismissive of her candidacy, or at least he has been up till now. So that's the way they're positioning each other in trying to define this race.
And just lastly, briefly, you also spoke about in your article the distinction between Trump and Haley, using their language in terms of how they describe America. Trump saying promoting America first, and Haley promoting a strong America. How do you think that could play out in the voters' minds, especially in terms of foreign policy and, for example, the Ukraine war?
Well, those who are kind of Reaganite in their thinking, American strength and peace through strength, they're going to be more inclined to Haley, that she wants to continue supporting Ukraine. She wants to stop Putin in his tracks. She wants to do the same for authoritarian regimes around the country. President Trump has been more skeptical of ongoing support for Ukraine. He says, let's pour those resources here at home where they're needed first. So it's more of a let's focus on domestic issues versus we need a strong foreign policy in order to be the leader of the free world.
All right.
So those who, voters have their choice.
On what she and her supporters are discussing as the hour of the New Hampshire primary and perhaps her political future draws near.
Judge Judy, or Judith Scheindlin, warned about another Biden or Trump presidency on Sunday, saying, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me."
We've already seen what these two presidencies look like. It's time for Nikki Haley.
Independent voter Nancy Hansen says the country needs change.
Both Democrat and Republican, and the best chance for that, I think, this year is through Nikki Haley.
Undecided voter John Anthony is putting in the work to choose his candidate.
I haven't picked who I'm going to vote for. I've been to every single person's rally that's been around the area.
20-year-old Noah Merrow says he generally leans Democrat.
Because of a lot of the issues, specifically abortion, things like that. But Nikki Haley seems like a more approachable option because she's more centrist on the issues.
Greg Moore says white-collar, educated voters like Nikki Haley.
But Donald Trump just rubs them the wrong way, mostly because of the tone.
Commodities broker Chris Jay says he's leaning towards Haley.
I just think that the theme of different candidate other than Biden and Trump is just critically important to where we're going.
Jay hopes Haley can muster the strength to battle Trump.
And I would like for her to show tougher, and I would like for her to go up against Trump. I just don't know if she can do it.
Haley on Saturday painted herself as a defender of the common man.
I call elected officials out because accountability matters. I fight for the taxpayers. I fight for the real people. I don't fight for the politicians.
Haley questioned whether Trump or Biden were mentally capable of serving as president again.
We have
To say earlier after she spoke just a few hours ago.
I like some of her policies. I mean, obviously, we can't agree with everything. But for the most part, I believe she would be a great president.
I like her a lot. Yeah, I've been to a number of her events, and she, what she calls, speaks hard truths. I think she says what she means, and
She's smart. She seems to have some common sense.
She's certainly a vast improvement over Donald Trump. We're poised at the edge of World War III, in my opinion. We need people who can think seriously about their responsibilities as president.
She's the candidate that I'm endorsing. I'm for. As I said before to other people, baby boomers need to step back, and we need some new blood. And Haley, to me, seems the most electable from our standpoint.
Okay, and what issues are most important to you this election cycle?
Well, I just retired, so Social Security and VA.
Financial responsibility. certainly, I think the federal government has lost that.
Push her forward because she
Right, so
has.
It depends on the funding, of course. I just wanted to look now at Trump's strategy. You wrote even challenge traditionally blue states. How do you think that strategy will play out?
Well, I think that is a commonly done strategy when you think you have a chance to do it, because it's going to scare the Democratic Party a bit, and I think right now they're actually quite scared of Trump. His potential to have some kind of a wave election, which we wouldn't have anticipated a year ago, but things have been so bad in the country that there's an opening, and I think the Democrats know it. I think they're very fearful, which may mean that Biden is more likely to be replaced by someone like Michelle Obama.
Yeah, you also wrote about that recently, and you've said that you expect that to come earlier rather than later. Could you talk about the dynamics at play there and how they might affect the political campaigns of both Haley and Trump?
Well, previously I had thought that if Biden was replaced, it would be very late. It would be either at just before or during the convention in Chicago in August. But now I'm sensing panic on the Democratic side that you don't usually see. I mean, in terms of many of its more prominent thinkers, and so that may push forward changes. I'm not 100% sure of that. As Yogi Berra has told us years ago, predictions are dangerous, particularly about the future. So I don't want to get too much egg on my face, but I'm thinking that there are going to be big changes, and this is a year of change. I mean, we've had spectacular amounts of things that no one could have predicted in the last few years.
Yeah, now just staying on the Democratic Party and their primary, as we just heard, the DNC primary in New Hampshire has been called meaningless by some. How do you see it?
I think it is essentially meaningless because Phillips, the second candidate, has not made much of a dent, even though if you look at what he says, he's a fairly rational guy, and he is sort of like a Democrat of the days of the Kennedys and so forth. He's an old-time Democrat, but that doesn't seem to be resonating in today's Democratic Party. So I have to agree with that general consideration that the primary is NBD, no big deal for them.
All right, and just lastly, Roger, how do you see the role of the media in shaping people's perceptions of the candidates?
Well, as usual, my feeling about the media is their influence is malign. I disagree with Trump on one level. I think they're worse than fake news. They're just a propaganda organ most of the time. And you can look for, they will find any way possible to stop Trump.
All right, thank you so much, Roger Simon.
For Liberal Propaganda Act, introduced by Missouri Senator Josh Hawley. If passed, it would block the Department of Homeland Security from funding programs that show bias against conservative views. The bill specifically names issues like COVID-19, vaccination, media bias, immigration, and crime. It comes on the back of a report last week revealing DHS funded an effort by Rhode Island Media Education Lab for, quote, community-created counter-propaganda. A total of $700,000 was paid to activists who wrote blog posts denouncing conservative views and former President Trump. The agency drew the money from a grant program designed for terrorism response. Voting laws put into place in Arizona following the 2020 presidential election are being probed by the courts. The laws require voters there to show proof of citizenship. This came after a shocking discovery that over 11,000 voters did so during the 2020 election without proof of legal citizenship. NBC's Arian Pastor has the story.
One of the 2022 laws requires voter registration to include documentary proof of citizenship. The other one gives officials the authority to cancel voter registrations if they don't include evidence of U.S. citizenship. Now, several plaintiffs are claiming voter suppression. The case is ongoing. A district court in Arizona is scheduled to hold a hearing later this month. Meanwhile, a Chicago suburb is reportedly suffering from an increase in certain crimes committed by illegal immigrants. Newsbreak reports that since October, almost 50 recently arrived immigrants have been arrested for retail thefts and home and car burglaries in the suburb of Oak Brook alone. Immigrants are being housed in that suburb. Many of the alleged thieves reportedly use the same tactics when committing crimes, possibly indicating they're planning and organizing together. And lastly, the United Nations Migration Agency is seeking almost $8 billion to help migrants on the move and implement easier pathways to immigration. The agency hopes the funding will come from individual and private sector donors, as well as governments.